with the escalating clash over the controversial deportation flights, where an appeals court heard arguments over Trump's implementation of the Wartime Alien Enemies Act today, with judges hammering the Justice Department attorney.
There were plane loads of people. There were no procedures in place to notify people. Nazis got better treatment under the Alien Enemy Act than has happened here.
Your Honor, we certainly dispute the Nazi analogy.
People don't go through a trial in this country without getting the gold standard of due process. And that was not happening here. The president has to comply with the Constitution and laws like everybody else.
On that, we certainly agree, Your Honor.
Earlier today, the judge presiding over the case defending his block on deportations under the act for the alleged gang members, writing, each plaintiff is, quote, entitled to individualized hearings before deportation. This as Trump continues to lose in court, last week facing a major blow to his agenda, and this week already amassing even more losses. Joining me now is Ankush Khardori, former federal prosecutor and senior writer for Politico magazine, and Libby Casey, senior news anchor for The Washington Post. So, Ankush, I want to start with you on what the judge said, the gold standard. And the gold standard is certainly in criminal defense cases is due process, right? So let's listen to what the appeal court's judge had to say about going forward without due process. Let's listen.
If the government says we don't have to give process for that, then y'all could have put me up on Saturday and thrown me on a plane, thinking I'm a member of Nicaragua, and given me no chance to protest it and say somehow it's a violation of presidential war powers for me to say, excuse me, no, I'm not. I'd like a hearing.
That last part, right? You know, wrapping everything around federal war powers to the exclusion of a constitutional right that we have known as due process.
Yeah, and she's spot on there. And, you know, I think it's worth emphasizing the very narrow concept that she is talking about and that Judge Boasberg are talking about. They're not saying you can't ever do this. They're not even yet saying that the law is unconstitutional. They may at some point, who knows. They're just saying there needs to be some sort of process for these people to contest their designation under this law so that, for instance, you do not make a mistake, which was a frightening proposition, the notion that even one person may have been incorrectly designated and now is thrust into this legal black hole with possibly no recourse to get out. That is what due process, even the most minimal due process, is supposed to help us sort out so that judges can adjudicate the disagreements between the government and the defendant.
Well, and it's that piece of it that I think is the most interesting, Libby, is this administration is coming in and basically saying, well, you know, all of this executive power that the president has, and we are at war, I guess, apparently with Venezuela, but nobody's told the Venezuelans. So there's that. But you do have the Post making note of the fact that the judges seem to be drawing the very, very important lines that I think a lot of folks have been waiting maybe Congress to draw. But you have, for example, the headline, you know, over a dozen judges have ruled Trump administration has likely broken the law. More than a dozen judges have said Trump and company probably broke the law. The total works out to one such finding about every 4 days. So here's my question. So what?
So Donald Trump and his team want this to be a fight. Let's go back to the deported Venezuelans who were not, let's remember, sent back to Venezuela. They were sent to a maximum security hardcore prison. So imagine if you're not someone who's in a gang. In fact, what if you were fleeing those gangs and coming to the United States to work? They were all on the radar. They had court hearings. They were in the system. One of my colleagues reported that families of 4 of the men say they were swept up just because they have tattoos that were about family and things like that. And that was
one
part
had
of
a soccer league tattoo.
Justification. So Trump and his team, like the borders are, for example, want people to think this is judges getting in the way of national security, getting in the way of Donald Trump protecting you from these gang members. And what the judges are saying is, let's look at the law. And what we see in a lot of cases across the country, in district courts in various states and in the national level, saying, well, wait, let's go back to the law. And what is the process to let go of these probationary federal employees? What is the process to send people out of this country without their hearings. And so that's where things are kind of gumming up the works for Trump's agenda. He's trying to make it a fight of, I want to save you and deport the bad guys, and they're trying to stop it. But the judges are saying we're following the law and we're going to go through this process.
Well, and it's that part. We're following the law and we're trying to stop bad things from happening under the law, which shouldn't happen, which means you just can't indiscriminately come into the studio, grab the three of us and just take us off, put us on a plane and send us to a maximum security prison in another country. There's a process, and that was very much a part of the government lawyer today was tripping all over himself, trying to get it back. Well, 5 people, they did the habeas thing, and Judge Miller was like, I'm not talking about the 5. I'm talking about the 2 planes of individuals that were not allowed due process. Speak to that.
Yeah, I mean, the lawyering from the Justice Department has not been particularly good. I'm setting aside even the merits. For instance, it's generally a bad idea to attack the judge.
I got like several text messages from lawyers today on that point.
You should not attack the judge. This is a very basic proposition, and they're all doing it. It tends to upset them. The thing about this is an entirely contrived emergency.
Yeah.
There's no reason for them to have rushed this process except to make a point and maybe to set some sort of precedent. And there's a big, I don't know if you irony or contradiction here, which is that they're very insistent. Tom Homan has been, these are hardened criminals. Some of them have criminal histories. We have all this great intelligence. Now they're trying to cover up that evidence under the state secrets privilege. And we've talked about this before. If they have competent evidence of criminal misconduct on the part of these people, it is very, very simple to produce it in a court of law, initiate a criminal prosecution, and then deport them afterward.
That's it. And so, Libby, that's really the process. So how do you think this is being read by a lot of the American people right now? I mean, what are you guys hearing?
Yeah, I mean, polls support President Trump and the Democrats before him rooting out gang members, sending dangerous individuals out of this country who don't have a legal right to be here. But now you're getting into the gray areas of how do you know they're gang members? Where's the proof they're gang members?
So is that the part they don't understand, or what is it that the American people may be missing?
I think, Michael, that's your job, right, is to help people understand this better.
Right.
Because when you have Trump administration officials going on cable news and saying, that these activist judges are just trying to stop us doing the right thing, will that resonate with people, or will they really follow the who, what, when, where, why? And we saw Judge Boasberg, who's the one who was overseeing this, the Venezuelans case, say, I need to know when you made these decisions. I need to know what did you know, when did you know it, how did you know it? Because the Trump administration is trying to stop him right now from understanding and knowing transparently what their timeline was of throwing those people on the plane and getting them out of this country when they already knew there was going to be a proceeding on the books, when he was issuing things from the bench, when he was putting things in writing. I mean, that's all about following the basic tenets of the law.
And the appellate court today got into that same timeline conversation, trying to understand, well, tell us when the plane left. You mean to tell me you can't? How long is the flight between the base where they left from and when, where they landed? So these things do matter to judges in terms of assessing how to apply the rule of law and the Constitution, all the other things that they need to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, Judge Boasberg's opinion says that he believes the timeline indicates that after the government became aware that he had received the case, they rushed these people to planes in order to whisk them off before an injunction might be entered. And the timeline has been very opaque. I think it suggests that they're deliberately obfuscating it, not just struggling to come up with the timeline.
Right.
And by the way, the sorts of questions you're asking are very simple questions.
Right.